All right, so welcome back to another edition of LFG, the Franchise Education Unfiltered podcast. This week, folks, for those of y'all returning, we have an amazing special edition where you don't have to hear mine and Leanne's nonsense of banter. We are just jumping straight in because there's so much wonderful information that we have. Today we have our special guest, Jason Feifer, who is the editor-in-chief at Entrepreneur. We are super, super excited. Actually, for those of you that are watching us on YouTube, so you're not going to even see this. So those of you that are, let me correct myself, listening on Spotify, this is my token to Entrepreneur, our framed. This was on an edition just a month ago. But yeah, we're super excited to have Jason on with us, and we're going to take it away straight to the special edition. Jason, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hey guys, tell you. So first of all, Michael, what did you just hold up right there? Was that a page from these from the top suppliers list that we published in September?
Exactly. Top
Awesome.
suppliers list, and thank you for featuring the National Franchise Show, and you also featured Franchise Assembly. We were so happy to be able to make the list for top event
Yeah.
for 2024.
Right. Well, you guys do great work. I appreciate it. Thanks for framing it. That's fun. That's on your desk there. So yeah. Hey everyone. I'm Jason Feifer. I'm the editor in chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. Things to know first, if you're listening or watching, which is I'm not in top shape here. I've had a cold for the last week and a half. You can hear it in my voice. Also, we're recording this very early in the morning. I just got my kids out the door, so I'm like wearing a hoodie and my hair's all messed up and whatever. But this is how we do it, right? Business does not wait. And also, behind the scenes here, Leanne, Michael, and I, we had to reschedule this podcast like 5 times because everyone was getting sick. And so anyway, it's great to be here. As folks probably know, in the franchise world, Entrepreneur has been a leading voice in the franchise space for 40 something years. I should know the exact number, but I don't. And we publish every year the Franchise 500, the leading ranking of the top franchises. And that has just come out. So hot off the press, we've got the new Franchise 500. We're really excited about it and excited to talk about what it says about franchising today and where the opportunities are, where we're seeing lots of growth.
Love it. And Jason, tell us, if you don't mind, you talk a little bit about the Franchise 500. Do you have a little bit of a history, the background? How did that start? Maybe a little bit of context of why it was started and so on?
That's a great question. I don't know exactly why it was started. It was before my time, possibly in every way. But I'm 44. The list has, I think, been around for 45 years, so it was truly before my time. But I'll tell you this: this is how deep the roots go in franchising for entrepreneurs. So, Entrepreneur, decades ago, I think might locate this in the 80s, but I'm not entirely sure. Was near bankruptcy as a company, and one of its advertisers, a franchisor named Peter Shea, had so much great success advertising in the magazine and finding franchisees as a result that he said, "This is a great resource. I can't let this thing go." And also, he just figured he could run it better than whoever owned it previously. So Peter bought it and then revived it and turned it into the brand that you know. And Peter has passed away, but he passed the magazine along to his son, Ryan Shea, who is currently the CEO. So this brand, which has deep roots in franchising, was saved and owned by a franchisor who was just an advertiser in the magazine, which is pretty cool. So why do we do it? I think we do it because I know. As a way to explain that, actually, let me just situate you in an interesting moment. One of the things I do for, but also outside of Entrepreneur is I do a lot of traveling and keynote speaking. So companies will hire me to come and talk to either their customers or to their employees or something. And many years ago, I was hired to speak at a Dream Vacations franchisee convention, which it should not surprise you to know takes place on a cruise ship. So Dream Vacations brought all of its franchisees onto Symphony of the Seas, which at the time was the world's largest like actual boat. It was very large. I couldn't give you any specs on it, but it was absurdly large. And as I spoke, it went great. And then that night, I went to a party that Dream Vacations was hosting, and this woman at the party, one of the Dream Vacations franchisee, comes running up to me with a old issue of Entrepreneur magazine, like old, and flips to the page. So, Michael, similar to how you were just holding up your like place in the listing, this was where she found Dream Vacations in one of the lists that we produced. So, however long ago that was, she was flipping through Entrepreneur, trying to figure out what she wanted to do next in her life and career. And she saw Dream Vacations and she circled it at the time. And then she did her own research, as everyone should do, right? We always say these lists are just starting points. And she liked what she saw. She became a Dream Vacations franchisee, sorry, and it changed her life. And she still has that magazine, and she brought it on the cruise ship because she knew I was going to be there, and she wanted to show it to me. And that is what we're trying to do here. Like honestly, that's what we're trying to do, which is we know that franchising can be transformative, but we also know that at the very beginning, it can be absolutely overwhelming. There are so many choices. There's so much to explore. And so we want to try to make that simple for people. And the way that we do that is by every issue, we in some form or another take a look at the world of franchising and then produce rankings. The Franchise 500 is our biggest one, but throughout the year, we'll do, top, top franchises that are supportive of veterans, and top food franchises, and we're always just trying to take slices of franchising that are relevant to people. And in the Franchise 500, we organize it in lots of different ways. So we do have the list of 500, but also you can go through this index and find brands ranked by industry or by category. So that's pretty interesting. So if you happen to be really interested in pet care, for example, you can just go skip straight to pet care and see who's on the list in the order in which we've assessed them to be strongest. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to make resources for people. We're trying to keep it as up to date as possible so that we help people skip a step towards their franchising journey.
Amazing. I'm super excited to see the list because I know it just got released, but and I'm a big advocate of the list. I think it's a great resource for people, and I'd love to see how it's evolved over the years. A big fan, promote it to any brand that I work with. But what are the factors that go into creating the list? Because I know, in full transparency, Jason and I used to work together at Entrepreneur. Yep. So I personally know how the list is created, but for those of you who don't, I'd love to kind of know the data and the algorithm behind it.
Yeah. So, well, Leah, jump on in and add color as you see fit, because you've also seen inside of this. The most important thing to tell you, and it saddens me that I even have to say it, but people ask me enough that I'm just going to say it, which is that you cannot pay your way onto this list. It is not a paid thing. I really, like, my blood boils a little bit just to even think that people assume that, because if something is paid for, then there's no trust. Like, why on earth would you even pay attention to it? It would undercut the very foundation of the 40 plus years that we've been making this thing, to allow anybody to buy their way onto it. And also, why would we even need to when there are so many great franchises out there, considerably more than 500? I mean, more than 1,000 brands apply to be on this list every year. So what actually goes into it? So it is a consideration of more than 150 data points. We spend half a year just gathering and crunching data. We have franchises submit a mountain of information about themselves, and then we break it up into 150 data points. The categories of those data points are costs and fees, size and growth, support, brand strength, and financial strength and stability. And in the magazine, we then break out some of those subcategories there. So, for example, when we're talking about support, we're talking about training times, marketing support, operational support, franchise or infrastructure, and more. And then, what is what everything here can be categorized and quantified. And then once we have all that, then the team here builds an algorithm which shifts from year to year in small but meaningful ways as we're assessing what are the most important ways to consider strength in a brand, in a franchise brand today. But this is the reason why, for example, Culver's is in the top 10, even though Culver's, which is a Midwestern fast food brand, for those who don't know, Culver's is not nearly as large, like nowhere near as large as the other brands that are in the top 10. The top 10 generally features brands like UPS Store and Taco Bell and McDonald's and so on. Like, what is Culver's doing in there? And the reason is because a brand like Culver's is exactly the kind of thing that we are looking for and that we're building this algorithm to identify. Culver's has very consistent strength. It has next to zero closings. They clearly do an excellent job of identifying the right franchisees and then supporting them. Their year over year growth is really strong at the unit level. And I love to see things like that. I love to see brands that are surprising and are smaller than what we would think of as like the major swingers in franchising rise up the list, because it shows you that this is an algorithm. What we are doing our best to do is try to identify fundamentals of strength in brands, not just size, not just growth, not just revenue. That's boring and obvious, but instead try to get an overall picture of what the strength of a brand is.
I love it. And that's fantastic. So it's not throwing darts on the dartboard,
It is not.
which is
Yeah.
which is great. And you don't have to answer this. Of course, we're not going to mention any names, but maybe on an annual, how many franchisors actually do approach you guys to say, hey, can I pay for this and get on the list?
Oh, it's interesting. I have never. I'm trying to think through my like memory box here. I have never specifically directly been asked that question from a franchisor. I think that franchisors all understand it, and it is the watchers of the list that don't. So it's people who are aware of the list, because if you're a franchisor, then you've engaged with us on the Franchise 500 often for decades. So I don't know that there's a misperception among franchisors for that, but there's definitely a misconception among, like, I've heard that question come from brokers and other people in the franchise ecosystem. Although departing from franchising for a second, but just fun fact, because you asked me that question, I have gotten a lot of requests over the years for people not outside of franchising to pay to be on the cover. So I've had a lot of people reach out and offer money for their CEO to be on the cover. And more than one celebrity through their representation has offered money to be on the cover. I mean, I say no every single time, and I say no very strongly. I don't want people to even have that perception that it's possible, but it is out there. I think that I don't know that people would have wondered that decades ago, but the media landscape has changed so much and it's so confusing. And there is a lot of pay for play out there among shady fly by night, media operations. And so I understand why there's confusion in the marketplace, and I do my best to dispel it.
Yeah, there's a lot of magazines, and I get hit with them, my brands get hit with them, of like, pay $10,000 for your CEO to be in this top 10 CEO list. So like you said, the watchers, and I notice it's a lot of the consultants or the brokers or those kinds of people who are all chatting about how it's a pay to play model. I will defend it every time. And
yeah, you saw it. You saw the inside of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's so disheartening, because there is a lot of work that goes into it, and these brands really put a lot into it. And I just hope more and more brands continue to get themselves on that list, because even beyond the 500, you've got all of these smaller lists that they can make that kind of really divide it up and niche it out. And I think it's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is, right? So it is the three of us today. We could set up a website and we could make up some name for a publication, right? We could call ourselves the Franchise Journal Express, which I don't want to disparage anyone. I don't think the Franchise Journal Express exists in the real world. If they do, I apologies. But we could call ourselves the Franchise Journal Express, and we could set up a crappy website, and then we could just start sending out DMs to everybody in the world and say, we're putting together a top franchise list for Franchise Journal Express, and it costs $10,000. Somebody out there is going to spend that money. They just are. And then one or two things are going to happen. Either number one, the Franchise Journal Express is going to publish that, and zero people are going to see it or care about it, because if that's the way a brand is making money by getting people to pay for coverage, then who's reading it? Why would anyone be reading that? So there's no audience for that stuff. Or here's the other thing that happens, because I hear about this all the time. Or people spend the $10,000 and then nothing happens. Then franchisejournalexpress.com disappears from the earth, and and they can't get their money back, and that's the end of the story. People fall for that stuff all the time, which I cannot implore you enough. If somebody asks you to spend money for guaranteed media placement, especially if it's like on some kind of award, just like go running, screaming away as fast as you can.
You know what? It's so great that you're explaining what actually goes into half a year's worth of work putting together a list, because there's so many other things like you just said, whether it's an award or being on another list. There are so many and shady lists out there where and not to say that I'm just going to throw this out there, like a broker network or something. Obviously, they have an invested interest in who they're putting on the list, and they just maybe, like you said, start up a magazine. And I've literally seen in month number 2, all of a sudden there's a list, and it's all the people in their network, and it's like, oh my gosh, really? And unfortunately, the Zors and some of them fall into the category of being an emerging brand. They're thinking, oh, this is great, I'm getting into this magazine, I just won this award. And meanwhile, you've got one franchise, and you're literally like,
Right.
to your point. But so sorry. One last question,
Sure.
and then we'll move on. So what you're saying is we can't get Leanne on the front cover?
Well, yeah, maybe we make an exception if the dollar figure is right.
All right. So let's get back to the list. Tell us a little bit about maybe some of the industries or sectors that are experiencing the most growth on this year's list. Do you have any idea of what has maybe? I know sometimes it's funny with franchising, and you'll talk to this a little bit as well. Sometimes there's the fad franchise that comes out. One year I remember there was yogurt, and one year I remember there was all of a sudden 20 CBD franchises and different things. I know that can fluctuate, but from maybe industry's perspective, is there something that's growing a little bit more?
Yeah, well, it's true. It is really fun to see the trends and the shifts, I think, in culture and in the economy show up in the list in various ways. So right, there was that boom in CBD, and we saw that in the list for that like 1 or 2 years. Oh God, so many frozen yogurt brands, so many. I mean, boy, you could drown in frozen yogurt. I'll tell you what, this is look, we see things at the category level, and I was trying to find, as you were talking, the numbers there, because it was interesting to see the shifts in like, I think the number of quick service restaurant brands that are on the list grew somewhat this year. But let me go find that. But I'll tell you, on the small end of growth, like what are the emerging things that we've been seeing? Because I feel like it says something, each of them says something really interesting about the opportunities in franchising. So for context, because there's so many brands, we have to break them up into categories and then subcategories. And when we are seeing enough growth inside of a specific category, we start to break it out into its own like subcategory. So for example, there's like a nightlife category, or then a bars category, and I think that's the taxonomy of it. But now there is a self-pour bars subcategory. There's enough growth in self-pour bars that it deserved its own breakout subcategory.
Wow.
So now you ask, what's driving that? And I think that's a really interesting example, that this year we had to do a subcategory specifically for self-pour bars for the first time, because self-pour bars as a concept and as a technology is not brand new. It's actually, I remember being at a different magazine in like 2011, writing about the emergence of self-pour bars. So here we are in 2025. Why the growth now? Well, that's what we wanted to know. We looked at the new subcategories, and then we started calling around to ask, like, what is driving the growth right now? It was pretty interesting. So in self-pour bars, you've got a real confluence of two factors. Number one is talent. Right, it is increasingly harder and harder to find good staffing for bars, and staffing gets more and more expensive, and so that can be a real strain on resources for franchisees. I'm sorry, I keep messing up the numbers or the names. And so self pour bars are a really good solution to that, because you can run it with considerably fewer people than a traditional bar, because people are filling their own glasses. And then the technology, which is, it's basic RFID technology, or right, like RFID, usually people get like a bracelet of some kind, and so when they go to fill up their cup, the machine knows who they are, and it knows exactly how much they're pouring out. That technology has just gotten better, like significantly better. So the tracking is better, the usage of data is better, and then that data is so useful for inventory management and so on. We've combined to have shifts in industry where there is a greater demand for running a business with fewer people, and plus just an improvement in the technology, has allowed for self-pour bars to become more of a thing now. And then also consumers are really liking it because it allows them to customize their experience more. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had this experience. I certainly have, where I've been out with some friends and I had a drink, and we want to hang out a little bit longer, and I really don't want like a second full beer. Like, that's too much. But like, if I could just fill this thing up like a little bit just to kind of keep hanging out, that'd be really nice. You can't do that at a regular bar. It doesn't make sense. There's no way to calculate it. But at a self-pour bar, there is. You can fill it up however much you want. So that is the reason that is it. So I'll give you three others that we're seeing as emerging and that deserve their own subcategories this year. Number one is autism treatment services. Really interesting to me, and that to me comes on the growth of last year. We had to introduce mental health services as a subcategory. Real estate investing. There's always been a real estate category, but now real estate investing is broken out as its own subcategory, driven by the shortage of affordable housing. And then the third is hydraulic hose services is growing at it. Leanne made a face on that one, so jump in. But I thought that one was interesting too, especially because I didn't know anything about this until we started making some calls. But apparently, there's been a push to do a lot more electrification in like heavy machinery industries. But despite that, there's still like a very heavy preference for hydraulic machinery. It's like surviving this push into electrification. And so the more hydraulic machinery there is out there, the more need there is for repairing the hoses in the hydraulic machinery. And that turns out to be a pretty good business.
That's cool. So every year, I know you kind of snag some personal favorites. You think you find some cool ones that you think are interesting. So for you, what are some of the personal ones that stuck out to you this year?
Oh yeah. Great question. So let me I'm looking through because I want to find some of my favorite answers to that without getting, well, okay. So to start, here's something that we've started to do this in the last couple of years, which is to look at the brands that applied for like the first time that are too early to actually like really rise on the list. Right, we call them unranked. So brands that submitted, that we verified, but that just they're too early, they haven't grown enough. I always think it's interesting to see what's on those lists, because it tells you about where the ideas are in the industry. So some of the ones on there that we've highlighted is New Mom School, which is a school for new moms, which is pretty interesting. So that's it started in as of, let's see, As of January of 2025, New Mom School expects to have 8 franchise locations across the U.S. with at least 20 more in the works. So not for nothing there. A mobile 3D scanning studio called Shrunk 3D, which is really fun. So like they'll make like a statue of yourself, for parties. Seen a lot of stuff in like plant-based. So we had highlighted plant-based treats company called Midnight Treats. Midnight Treats, guys. I don't. I don't know if I should be calling out Midnight Treats, but as an editor, this drove me a little nuts. So maybe you can validate or not. Midnight Treats shares the T in between the word. So it is MIDNIGHTREATS. And that really threw me off when I saw that. It feels a little confusing to me. I think Midnight Treats may want to consider a second T. Cat cafes. Seen a bunch of cat cafes out there in the franchising space, which is interesting. And then I'll do one more that's really fun, which is Fairy Tale Pet Care, which calls itself the nation's first wedding pet care company. So what does that mean? They have creative ways to involve your pets in your wedding, like a dog of honor video service where the company captures your wedding day from your pet's point of view. They also work with local shelters to bring adoptable pets to weddings. It's delightful. I love seeing. I love seeing fresh ideas enter the market. But anyway, tell me what you make of any of that. And as you do, I'm going to find this piece in the magazine that I really love that highlights where some of the brands that have moved up in the rankings the most, which is where I often find the most interesting stories in the rankings to be.
That was actually our next question for you, but I just Googled Midnight Treats and I can see why that's like really frustrating. Vegan friendly cookies.
I mean, they're good. They sent me a box and
nice.
yeah, Midnight Treats. I mean the product is great. It's great. It's a great product. I'm just here to open the conversation on whether or not you want to share the tea in there. And the reason for that is because and this is actually something that I find is fairly common inside of early stage brands, which is that they get very clever with their names. And one of the things that they don't think about, but I think is critically important, is like imagine saying the name of your brand on a podcast. And then imagine somebody listening and being like, that sounds delicious. I got to go find that. And then Googling for you. Do they know how to spell your name? Like, do they know how to spell your name? And if you said Midnight Treats, everyone would spell it as 2 words. So I think you're just throwing people off when you do stuff like that. Policy Genius, to go outside of franchising, Policy Genius, which is the primarily life insurance acquisition company. Policy Genius came to market not as Policy Genius, but as Know It Owl, which is know, K-N-O-W, it, owl, O-W-L, Know It Owl. That was the name. And that did not take. Investors were not interested in Know It Owl, and they changed it to Policy Genius, which is a much better name, again, because you can hear it and then immediately repeat it yourself.
Right. Well, also, I just want to point out that it goes to show that even if you send Jason cookies and you still don't make the list,
right?
It's not pay to play.
It's not pay to play.
People take cookies.
Oh, right. That's a good point. Yes. To be clear, right? That's actually. I appreciate you bringing that up. I should probably even mention that. So like, how does something like that happen? In that case, it was that we had already decided for Midnight Treats to be in that story, and so I assigned it to a writer, Sophia Wolfson, and Sophia Wolfson got in touch with Midnight Treats, and then they offered her. They're like, "Oh, could we send you a box of cookies?" Right? Like, we're already writing about you. Like, there's no bribing. Like, you're already in the story. But do you want to try that? And so Sophia texted me, and she was like, "This company has offered me cookies. I actually don't eat sugar, so I can't take these cookies. Do you want them?" And I have 2 boys, ages 5 and 9. They eat a lot of cookies, so I said, "Sure." So you can have the cookies sent to me. So the cookies showed up. My boys consumed the cookies like instantly, and that's the story.
They look good. It's like crumble cookies or dirty dough, but vegan.
Right.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and it's funny. I love how you were talking about some of the up and coming brands, because working on the franchise show, it's interesting to see. You mentioned the autism that, I've actually seen several brands that have come on the show floor recently that are in the space, and I haven't seen them in the past. Yeah, it's funny how being on the trade show floor, you can literally see what the up and coming trends of different brands are coming out too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The short 3D guy goes to your shows a bit, right?
Yeah, actually, I remember I think they were at the IFA, right? We were supposed to get one of those. It's kind of like a
Right.
bobblehead thing, right? Is that what it was?
It's a
Or
miniature,
or
like
a
a
miniature
statue.
statue?
Yeah, they make a little miniature statue.
But we
Of
never
you.
circled back. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of my boys would disagree, but I think I would be more interested in somebody sending a statue of me to my than a cookie. Cookie doesn't last very long. Honestly, why
Right.
did nobody sent me a statue, a Jason Pfeiffer statue? Where's that?
Yeah. Oh,
Nothing
that's great.
miraculous.
Yeah.
Uh, So, yeah.
Well, yeah. Oh, so no, go. There's another brand that I wanted to talk about, but I'm
No,
sure
please,
I'll weave
please.
it into. I'll weave it into the
Okay.
next.
I was thinking about to take it to the top 10.
Oh yeah.
Because everyone's interested in the top 10. Any big jumps this year on the list?
So, well, okay. You know what? I'm gonna just undercut the question because I thought you were gonna ask something that was gonna allow me to talk about Zoom and Grumman. So I'm gonna talk about Zoom and Grumman, and then I'm gonna get to the top 10. The reason I want to talk about Zoom and Grumman was really interesting to me. So Zoom and Grumman was in this list that we always put together this little feature that we call internally big movers, which are like we just find 5 brands that jumped the list a lot. So they didn't make it to the top 10. In the case of Zoom and Grumman, they made it going from not making the list in the past to number 280. But
Wow.
that's pretty strong debut. And what we always want to know is like, what did you do last year to enable that? And so Zoom and Grumman is what is this? This is a mobile like a dog grooming brand. And so what's interesting is that Zoom and Grumman, which I believe had been struggling, was acquired. And yeah, so Zoom and Grumman was 18 years old. It was struggling. It had just 2 franchises, 4 vans. It was acquired in 2021 by Loyalty Brands, and now has 134 units. And joining the franchise 500. And so here's what I loved about this insight here. And look, this is not for everybody, but this is certainly a big shift in franchising that's been happening, right? Which is acquisitions and roll-ups. And this is a really great example of how these companies, as they're collecting different service franchises, can really have those franchises support each other. So Loyalty Brands has a range of franchising, and the owner said this funny thing. He says our largest office does 5,000 tax returns. One of his franchises is so he co-founded Jackson Hewitt, the tax preparation service empire, and then sold that. He said, our largest office does 5,000 tax returns. Well, those tax returns, an estimated 3,500 of them have pets. So we cross-market to our other companies. Very few organizations do a good job of that cross-marketing. I expect that we'll have 1,000 franchisees by 2029. And you know what I love about this, and like seeing how smart people are about marketing the franchising space, is like, who else would think that there's a great connection between like tax prep services and mobile pet grooming? But the fact is there is because people who need tax prep, a lot of them have dogs and don't have a lot of time. And so if you can be really smart about your cross marketing efforts, then you can start to really drive business to unexpected categories and sectors. So that's something that we're seeing a lot of, is not just necessarily in acquisitions, but is really smart marketing. Like another brand that jumped rather significantly on the list is Amada Senior Care. And one of the ways that Amada Senior Care jumped rather significantly is that they did this. I don't know if you guys know Amada Senior Care. It was started by a former NFL player who had suffered a career-ending injury. When not a usual story for a senior care brand as an NFL player, but his mom had been in senior care, and so he saw it. So anyway, it leaned into two things last year, which allowed it to jump rather significantly on the list, which is number one was it started leaning more into placements, helping find the right senior care facilities for seniors, and then taking a kind of finder's fee for that. And then the other one was helping aging military veterans apply for this government benefit because it was really hard and complicated to do that. And so they rolled that out as a service all by itself. And then once the veterans got the government benefit, they had the money to then pay for Amada Care. And so it's like those like really smart customer acquisition strategies. Or sometimes it's like right underneath your nose. And sometimes it's just thinking differently about what your customer needs and how to find them. And that can have transformative value for a franchise. So I think that's a very interesting thing to look at. But anyway, let me pause, see if that sparks any thoughts in you guys, and then I'll tell you about the top 10.
I love it that you now that you're saying that, and what you were saying about John Hewitt is it's funny because after Jackson Hewitt, I remember him. This is going way back in my early days of franchising last year. Now I'm just kidding, like 10 or 15 years ago. I remember seeing him on a show floor, and he told me the whole story about Jackson Hewitt, and I can't remember it for the life of me, but maybe it was a breakup with his brother or someone, friend or whatever, and then he started Liberty Tax. And so now that you're saying that, it's all coming back to me. Yes, because they also through loyalty brands started ATAX. So I wonder if that means that he's no longer with Liberty Tax as well.
I don't know.
I wonder.
As the world turns in tax prep, I don't know.
Yeah,
that's a good question.
And it's wild that with the Zoom and Grumman too, because, and not to bring in the franchise show again, but they literally exhibit at every one of our shows, getting leads. And I love that you're saying that they have this growth because they use that area developer model where every person exhibiting is different in every state. So I guess that's
cool.
working for them.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, that's good context. Couple things on the top 10. You'd asked about the top 10. So number one is this jumped out at me as soon as I saw it. As soon as I got the top 10, which is that Wendy's is back in the top 10. Wendy's had not been in the top 10 for a bit. Last year it was number 17, and this year it is number 8. And that we called them up and we were like, "What's going on over there? What's going on over at Wendy's?" And the answer is a major leadership change. So they have a new president and CEO who was previously the CEO of PepsiCo Beverages North America, elevated a bunch of new people to head roles. And then they launched new initiatives like data-driven incentivization programs to help new franchises open in locations that have the highest probability of profitability. And then introduced development incentives in Canada and parts of Latin America. So, I think at those like really, really top levels with these brands that are already internationally known, I think a lot of this comes down to, like operational support and efficiency, and also being really good about identifying where there's still white space. And that actually was when I asked, our number one for the, I believe, 5th year in a row is Taco Bell. Once again, it's very, very hard to unseat Taco Bell. I mean, they are just so culturally hot. They're so smart about what they do. And I had like a moment of like a revelatory Taco Bell moment, a couple days ago, because on LinkedIn, what I do personally, this is like not an entrepreneur thing, but on LinkedIn every day, I post a commercial, like just like an advertisement, and then I break down why it was so smart, like a little marketing lesson about it. And so I just last week posted this ad that Taco Bell ran a number of years ago, where they had introduced nacho fries. Don't force me to explain what nacho fries are. I'm not really sure, but they look good.
Love them.
What's that?
My kids love them.
Oh yeah. Oh
yeah.
What are they? What are nacho fries?
They're fries that kind of like are, like Checkers fries. Do you know the difference between like Checkers fries? They're breaded, but they're breaded with like, it's almost like a Dorito type flavor.
Mm.
So, you know, the crunchy wrap taco, like the
Yeah,
Dorito
yeah, yeah.
flavored shell, it's kind of like that, but breaded and fried, but with that nacho flavor, that
Got
Dorito
it.
nacho flavor.
Okay. Sounds about right. That's on the money.
Yeah.
So, anyway, they introduced nacho fries. And the way that they introduced the nacho fries was not with a regular commercial, but with a minute and a half long fake movie trailer, or like it was like it was like a movie trailer, but for a movie that didn't exist, called Web of Fries. They had hired Josh Duhamel to, is that how you pronounce his name, to star in it, and it's like so funny. It's, you gotta watch it. And basically, it's like it opens with him sitting at like a dinner table with his wife and his daughter, and and they're talking about something, and his daughter is like, why doesn't Taco Bell have fries? And he sits back and he's like, why doesn't Taco Bell have fries? And so then it cuts to him Googling, like, why doesn't Taco Bell have fries? And then like the screen like shutters, and then he gets a phone call, and it's this like menacing voice. It's like, stop looking where you don't belong. And then the whole thing is like, it sort of unfolds as this thing where he's like going deeper into this conspiracy thing, and there's like a clown that's threatening him, and as he's trying to figure out like why Taco Bell doesn't have fries, and then at the end, of course, it reveals that now they do have fries. So it was really, really smart marketing. And what I wrote about was how you can't just have a differentiated product; you also have to have a differentiated message, and that sometimes the message itself isn't enough. You have to be different in the form of your message. And I was as I was writing that, I realized, like, oh, you know what's fascinating about this is that Taco Bell, when it rolls out new products, it generally has no major competition or confusion in the marketplace from any major competitor, because it is the only major Mexican inspired brand, right? So when McDonald's or when KFC rolls out a new kind of burger or a new chicken sandwich, like, there are so many other burgers and chicken sandwiches out there that you've got to be like kind of wildly creative, and then even still you're just sort of marginally different. Nobody else is rolling out like a chalupa. um,
Right.
so this was a moment in which Taco Bell was actually inside of the space that overlaps with major competitors in the quick service space, right? Because everyone else has fries. So they needed to be really, they couldn't just say like our fries are different, even if they're called nacho fries. Like, they had to go 3 steps deep into differentiation. And sorry, I just some thing popped up on my screen. And that's what they did. Anyway, that was actually years ago. It has nothing to do with Taco Bell being number one on the list today. But that thinking, that kind of thinking of being extremely culturally relevant, of always engaging and starting conversations, of being aware where your consumer is, and of living in that space with the consumer, that is definitely at the heart of what Taco Bell does. So this completes the first year of the new CEO, a guy named Sean Tresvant, who I've now had a couple conversations with. Really smart guy, comes from marketing. He was head of brand. He was a Jordan brand, and then he came over to Taco Bell, and he was the head of brand or something, whatever his title was. But he was responsible for driving all these really smart collaborations with athletes and musicians and celebrities. And they've been so clever in the last year. I mean, things that they've done, they rolled out what they called the Decades menu, which was inspired by the Taylor Swift Eras tour. But the idea was the Decades menu had brought back items that people love from previous decades. So like, something that people love from the 90s and something people love from the 80s on the menu, really playing into people's nostalgia, but being careful to not make it a nostalgic brand, right? Like, the idea is you still push forward, but at the same time, you engage with people looking back. They're so smart about collabs. They did a collab with Cheez-It. Did you guys know that Cheez-It is the number one cracker for Gen Z? Did you know that? I did not know that.
No.
Yeah.
For Gen Z?
Yeah. I asked Sean, I was like, I was like, you guys are really smart about the like collaborations that you do. So like, can you tell me like what's up with Cheez It? Like, can you tell me why? Like, go Google the Taco Bell Cheez-It thing. Like it shows up with a Cheez-It the size of your face. Like it is the largest, most comically absurd Cheez-It you've ever seen. And I asked like why I asked like why Cheez-It? Like you must have had like a list of 20 other possible collabs. Like why Cheez-It and not like gummy bears or something? And he was like, no, it was because Cheez-It is the number one cracker for Gen Z, which I mean, they just put me on the floor. Why Cheez-It? So random. But anyway, but he, and then he talks about the math and the magic of marketing, which I think is a really smart way of thinking about it, right? So there's math and magic. So, for Cheez-It, I'm just going to read straight from here. He said, for Cheez-It, the math is that it's Gen Z's number one cracker. There's insight into all of this, which says that our kind of cult is Gen Z and cultural rebels, and their Cheez-Its cult is Gen Z and cultural rebels. It's very similar to Doritos, which they had previously partnered with. It's one of Gen Z's favorite chips. That's the math of it, making sure that it's the right thing for our consumers. Then the magic is, how do we come together and tell a really compelling story with the 16 times Cheez-It and our iconic Crunch Wrap? And then you put those two things together, and the operations and marketing takes it forward. So anyway, if you want a masterclass in how to be, as Sean Tresvant calls it, a big B brand. Like he's like, we don't want to be a food brand. We want to be a big B brand. We just want to be a brand that people that people identify with, that they see as speaking for and with them in some way. Just watch what Taco Bell's doing, because it blows me away every year.
Yeah,
I love it. It's so always very interesting to me. I don't know, Jason, if you know, but I'm Jewish and kosher. So Leanne and I talk about
I'm Jewish and not kosher.
Oh, there. So of course, franchising has restaurants and brands, and and we talk about all this stuff, and I'm always like, I don't know. So,
Yeah.
but obviously, Taco Bell must make some good food. People are buying it.
Right.
No? Yeah. Right.
Presumably, I mean, if they weren't buying it, I don't know what else would be propping this business up. Yeah, I mean, I don't. For non-kosher reasons, I just don't generally like fast food. But I haven't eaten at a Taco Bell in decades. Don't tell Sean. But people love it.
Yeah.
People absolutely love it. And look, I think part of the reason is because clearly they make good food that people love, but also it's because they're creative. They're really creative and fun, and they have done a really good job. I've heard that phrase from them that I just quoted Sean on, cultural rebels, for years. Like they identified this psychographic of theirs, which is that we serve cultural rebels. We serve these people who like to think for themselves and like make their own decisions, and they've done a good job in which it is the food, but it's not just the food. It is also the identity that people place on Taco Bell. Sean travels around wearing Taco Bell swag, and he says that on the regular, people come up to him and ask him like to just they're like, can I just buy that jacket off of you? Or like, can I just trade shirts with you right now? Right. And it's like, that is a wild thing for a brand to have, is that kind of loyalty. And I think that comes from good product, but it comes from really good marketing and positioning and understanding your consumer and defining your consumer in a way that they feel seen. And Taco Bell does a great job of that.
Love it. Well, we're running out of time, but let me, I want to ask you one question, Leanne. I'm sure you have one or two things more. Are we able to ask for the top 10? Is everything officially out yet?
Oh, yeah, sure. As long as so the issue drops on does it drop on the 14th? I think yeah. By the time you're hearing this, you'll be able to hear it. So I'll give you the top 10. Ready? I gotta flip through it as I do. Okay. Number 1, Taco Bell. Number 2, Jersey Mike's. Number 3, Dunkin'. Number 4, Popeyes Louisiana Kitchen. Number 5, Ace Hardware. Number 6, The UPS Store. Number 7, Culver's. Number 8, Wendy's, we already covered. Number 9, Hampton by Hilton. And bringing it in at number 10, Kuman.
It's fascinating to me that Popeyes is still in the top 10 with all of these chicken concepts.
I know.
And they're the oldest brand, it feels like, besides KFC, but it's pretty cool that they're still there.
I know. Well, I mean, I feel like Popeyes, to my just like general consumer perception, Popeyes like did not exist until a couple of years ago, and then they made these really smart marketing shifts. They started engaging in culture in a really strong way, and suddenly they were popping and they were everywhere. They've done a really good job.
Yeah, I think these brands, like a lot of them, like Taco Bell, Popeyes, these are kind of cult brands almost that and people are loyal. I grew up on Popeyes, so
Oh,
it's been a forever thing for me, but I didn't grow up on KFC like a lot of people did. So uh,
yeah,
I
that's
think it's
interesting. I
cool
grew up
that,
in South Florida. I don't know that there was Popeyes there when I
yeah,
grew up there. So like it wasn't part of my consciousness. I grew up going to Wendy's, so
yeah.
that's always been on my radar.
Yeah. So I know when I work with brands, a lot of them make this a goal to get on the Entrepreneur 500.
Mm,
Like it is on the goal list. It's if they're on EOS, it's a rock. It's a big thing. And they either want to be on one of the smaller lists or they want to be on the bigger list or they want to be a certain number on the list or they want to move certain points. I mean, it's a really big deal to a lot of these brands, which I
yeah,
love.
yeah,
So the emerging brands though, like those brands who are, just coming into the space or they really have these goals and they haven't quite, made it to the franchise 500 yet. What advice do you have for them to, kind of get on the list or and start making their way? Even like what do we say? Zoomin and Groomin went from
yeah.
the last couple years to 270 something. So it's pretty impressive.
It is really impressive. Yeah. I'll give you a piece of advice. It is drawn. The caveat here is like there are a lot of people in this world. You two significantly, Leanne and Michael, significantly above me, who are qualified to tell you how to build a great franchise brand. I'm not. I'm a guy who makes a magazine and can tell you trends that I see. But I'll tell you one of the trends that I see, and that is smart, intentional growth. That is a story that comes up over and over and over again. There will, when we do those stories about the big movers, the people who jumped the list, there's always one or two of them where the story was this brand like grew really fast and then it like collapsed and it could not they just could not support these franchisees and so they hit pause on growth. A bunch of the locations closed. They like rethought their leadership. They invested heavily in franchise support. They like rethought their systems, and then they started growing again, but more intentionally and strategically. And that led to the kind of sustainable growth that then showed up in their ranking on the list. Like there's nothing that you can if you want to be on a franchise on a entrepreneur magazine franchise list outside of that you have to send us the information that we request from you which you do. Like otherwise don't focus on us. Don't focus on us. Like the focus cannot be on us. The focus is on your brand and the focus is on strong but steady and intentional growth, not just in numbers, but in support for your franchisees, in making sure that they are thriving, that there's unit growth, like there's the growth in each unit, right? There's like year over year revenue growth in each unit. That's the ball game, right? The brands that fail in franchising over and over again are the ones that think that success is just about throwing up as many units as they possibly can, and we've seen we've seen those brands like flame out really fast, and we've seen a lot of them learn those lessons and then come back really strong. And so that would be my advice. This is not about playing to entrepreneur. This is about building a great business.
And thank you for not saying responsible franchising. I like smart, intentional franchising.
Yes,
All
I know
right.
that. I
Anything
know
as we
that.
close it up? Anything else going on with you? I'll give you a plug. I've seen you keynote. We had you at one of our first masterminds, and
Yes,
I read your newsletter. You're one of the only newsletters I actually read, and I'm not
thank
just saying
you.
that. So any other places people can find you, or anything going on in your world that we can share here with the two listeners?
I appreciate Leanne. I really appreciate that. Well, I'll just follow up on those two things, but I'll give you one action point. So yes, I do a lot of keynoting, not just in franchising, though I do a lot of franchising. I've done talk about for Dream Vacations. I also had the pleasure of keynoting Pearl Vision, Spring Green, Pep Butler, O2E, which is 1-800 Got Junk, and and more. So anyway, I would love to talk in all the ways. Talk about talking. Feel free to get in touch. And a good way to do that is Leanne mentioned my newsletter. It's called One Thing Better. Each week, one way to be more successful and satisfied and build a career or company that you love. And you can find that at, and this is a website address, onethingbetter.email. So just plug that into a browser, onethingbetter.email. And this morning, Leanne, I appreciate you loving the newsletter. This morning, I woke up to a DM on Instagram from a woman who read a newsletter of mine a while ago at a moment in which she really needed some of the advice that I'd given. And I used this metaphor about when something is weighing on you, but there's nothing that you can do about it right now. I use this metaphor of throwing it into the ocean and like why that metaphor works. And anyway, you can go find it. But anyway, she sent me a photo of a tattoo that she just got on her shoulder that says "in the ocean" because of what I wrote in the newsletter. Like, holy cow.
Wow.
Wow.
It's amazing. Like when you put things out in the world, it impacts people. It impacts people in ways that you cannot imagine. And that's like what you say and what you do and what you build. And so, those moments really make me feel proud, but also like ever more responsible for putting good things out there. So anyway, that's pretty cool. I'm happy to be able to share that. Like that I just saw that like an hour ago for the first time.
Wow.
So pretty cool.
What a great way to start your day.
Yeah, sure is.
Podcast recording.
This was a great way to start the day too.
Oh, love it. This has been fantastic. Jason, thank you very, very much for your time. This has really been wonderful. This episode is brought to you by Subtle Strauss, Franchise Assembly, Hello Mastermind, and Orchitect. Leanne, any finishing thought?
No, but go check out the Entrepreneur 500. Very excited to see all the brands that make the list, and I can't wait for all those LinkedIn posts to start.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I should have said that. Let me be responsible as a employee of Entrepreneur Media. You should go to entrepreneur.com/franchise500, which is where you can find the list, or on stands wherever you find magazines. You can't miss it. It's got a big, it says buy a business, change your life, and then the Franchise 500 on it. So
oh, cool.
Anyway, that's
is
the
it
cover.
A double? Can you flip it again?
No, we stopped doing that. We used to do these flip covers where there was a kind of non-Franchise 500 cover, and then you would flip it over, and then there would be a Franchise 500 cover on the back, and then it would almost be like two magazines at once. But we decided, you know what, this is our big franchise of the year, and so let's not do two covers. Let's just make the Franchise 500 cover the cover. So that's what we've been doing for the last 2 years. So no, it's just that on the back of the magazine is a advertisement for Dogtopia. So thanks, cool. Dogtopia.
Well, congratulations to everybody who made the list, and thanks for coming on, Jason. And we look forward to more exciting stuff throughout the year.
Thank you, guys.
All righty.
All right. Have a good day, guys.
Bye.
Bye.